History suggests that the Indonesian military power should not be mocked because when it comes to showing impact on the world, Indonesia has proven its worth and power at least twice already. The first one happened during the administration of the first president of this country, Sukarno, also known as Bung Karno. It was 1960 when President Sukarno decided to seize West Irian, or today we call it West Papua. During that time, this land was under dispute between the Netherlands and Indonesia, both claiming it and both didn't want to let go of their claims. Indonesia was once a colony of the Dutch, but even after giving this country their own independence, the Dutch wanted to keep their flag on some portion of this nation, meaning they still wanted a piece of it, and we are talking about West Irian or West Papua. But Indonesia doesn't want this idea, so through the years they have been trying to make a peaceful agreement with the Netherlands to get their land back. But the Dutch were stubborn and really wanted to retain this land. So in 1960, Indonesia had enough and finally made their military invasion in West Irian. In just 2 years, the Indonesian armed forces were transformed into the largest war force in the southern hemisphere, including the navy of 16 submarines that successfully patrolled the west coast of Australia without being detected by the enemy. Meanwhile, their air force was so strong for having 2 Tu-16 long-range bombing squadrons that could easily reach the entire Southeast Asia and Australia region, drop bombs, and even return safely to their bases. And after the terrifying forces that Indonesia showed, the Dutch finally agreed to leave this country alone because they knew that Indonesia was not the weak nation anymore that they once colonized. But how powerful is Indonesia's military? Can they actually fight toe-to-toe with the enemy when the time comes that they need to defend their lands again? Well, welcome to the military power of Indonesia. I mentioned a while ago that Indonesia had already demonstrated its military power twice in history. The first was their successful invasion of West Irian against the Dutch. The second one occurred between the 1980 and the 1988. In that period of time, Indonesia started to revive its image as one of the most powerful military forces in Asia. During that time, there were 2 generals who served in different eras that strengthened the armed forces. General M. Yusuf made a program to heavily train the soldiers again after so many years of being relaxed. In other words, he revived the sleeping capabilities of those Indonesian soldiers. And in the following era, General Mordani found the opportunity to buy some military weapon systems that were actually not new. I mean, they bought the used ones. They bought 6 Van Spijk frigates from their former enemy, the Netherlands. Van Spijk frigates were once used by the Royal Netherlands Navy. So obviously Indonesia needs to make some repairs in order for these 6 naval ships to be operational. And they successfully repaired those ships. Next, they also bought 10 F-16 Fighting Falcon fighters, which also gave them a huge advantage when it came to their offense and defense. And I want you to remember that during that time, not all countries had that kind of military weapon. And for Indonesia to have those in that era only shows how powerful they were even back then. Okay. I'm saying all that to show how Indonesia prioritizes its security. I mean, for a country to have this kind of geography, which consists of many islands, I think it was really a wise decision to strengthen their defense for some future invasion. But do you think there are other nations that would dare to invade Indonesia? I mean, we are talking here about the most powerful military forces in Southeast Asia? Yes, you heard it right. Indonesia is currently the most powerful country in Southeast Asia and is actually ranked 13th in the most powerful military in the world. It is crazy to think that Indonesia, one of the victims of 2 great wars, is now one of the strongest nations in the world. Anyway, to measure the military power of one country, they use the so-called Nations Power Index. To know the nation's power index, they need to analyze almost 60 factors to determine their actual power. These determining factors include the number of military units, financial position, logistical capabilities, and geography. Well, the perfect score is 0.0000, meaning that if your country scored 0, then even an alien invasion would never happen in your nation because your defense and offense are perfect. Of course, such a country doesn't exist. Even the Kingdom of Wakanda would never score 0, even after having a powerful shield and weapons.
Wakanda forever!
Sorry, let's get back to reality. The United States is currently the most powerful military in the world, having a 0.0712 power index, followed by Russia, China, and India. Meanwhile, Indonesia has a 0.2221 power index, which is a really impressive feat if you ask me. Since this video is all about the military power of Indonesia, we will just focus on this thing. I know I mentioned that the most important determining factors of a nation's power index are military units, financial position, logistical capabilities, and geography. I would make separate videos about those other factors, but today we will discuss only the military aspect. Let's start with their budget for the military. According to the World Bank data, Indonesia spent $8.8 billion for their military expenses in 2023. That was around 0.70% of their total GDP. And if we are going to sum up the total amount they spent on military from 1974 to 2023, then it would be around $165.93 billion already. That was really a huge amount of money. So now, with that money, what does Indonesia already have at this moment? Well, the military forces of Indonesia consist of the Army, Navy, and Air Force, and as of 2023, they had approximately 400,000 military personnel, including the Indonesian Marine Corps. If you are wondering which country has the largest count of soldiers, then that would be China, with 2 million military personnel. Of course, having huge populations is one of the top reasons why China ranks top on this aspect. And as you can see from these rankings, those countries with large populations tend to have many military personnel as well. Except for North Korea, this nation prioritizes the military, so despite their lower population than Indonesia, North Korea manages to claim the top 4 with the largest armies in the world. But again, measuring the power of one nation needs to consider many factors, and the total count of armies is just one of them. Another important factor is their military weapons and equipment. So how powerful is the military weapons system that Indonesian armies have? In war, you need to have military weapons and systems that will effectively work in every circumstance. You can only say that a nation is powerful if they have weapons on land, in the air, and at sea. And Indonesia has that. If the war occurs on land, they have 598 tanks that can make a powerful defense and offense. And for efficient mobilization of the 400,000 soldiers, they have 1,539 armored vehicles for that job. Of course, all the firearms and equipment that these soldiers will use in battle are high-level rifles. The standard assault rifle that the Indonesian army and police are using is called the Pindad SSS 1V1. This rifle is quite old, to be honest. They have been using it since 1991, but they keep modifying it to fit their battle needs. And they have already made different variants of this rifle, depending on who will use it and where to use it. Anyway, Indonesia is not the only one using the Pindad SSS-1, and even some powerful countries like the US know the worth of this assault rifle. But what about at sea? What if the war happened in the ocean? Does the Indonesian Navy have a chance to defend itself? Well, not only a chance to defend, but a chance to win. You see, in general, Indonesia is ranked 13th in the most powerful military army in the world. But when it comes to the power of the Navy alone, the Indonesian Navy is ranked 4th globally and 2nd in Asia. And that is how powerful the Indonesian Navy is. At this moment, it is said that the Indonesian Navy has 243 active fleet units. That includes their 4 submarines. I am not going to give you every detail of their fleet, but to give you an idea, they have 7 frigates, 25 corvettes, 9 mine warfare, 168 offshore patrol vessels, and 30 amphibious assault. And according to the report, they are still waiting for some additional 13 ships, including another 3 submarines. That is really impressive and scary at the same time. Indonesian Navy is not the one you should try to mess with. And I think it is also a smart decision to strengthen their navy since their geography suggests it. You know, they consist of so many islands and are surrounded by the ocean, so having a strong navy is really necessary. Lastly, there is the Air Force. The Indonesian Air Force is ranked 29th in the world, and as of this moment, they have 254 active aircraft, which are 63 fighters, 13 close air support aircraft, 26 helicopters, 58 aircraft for transport, 85 for trainers, 1 aerial tanker, 8 aircraft used for special missions, and another 60 aircraft that are still being manufactured. And that was the Indonesian Air Force, powerful enough to make an invasion through the sky in most of the countries in the world. But what about nuclear weapons? Well, Indonesia doesn't have any because it's one of those countries that wants to eliminate nuclear weapons. Indonesia has ratified the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. In other words, Indonesia has no plans on building nuclear weapons because they are totally against it and believe that it will only bring terror. Well, they are not wrong though. Nations that have nuclear weapons only pose threats and unfair advantages. But of course, nuclear weapons are also one of the main things that tie down superpower countries to make another global war, because believe me, a global war today means a nuclear battle, and that would be terrifying and probably will end quickly. And nobody wants that. Anyway, Indonesia is surely the most powerful army in Southeast Asia and even the 13th most powerful in the world. But at the end of the day, Indonesia doesn't want any more war. As much as possible, they only want peace for their land. They just want to stand strong and defend their territories. But if some nations try to invade Indonesia today, well, most probably they will fail.